A Life in the Cinema. The Mexican woman's freak baby might have been the worst thing ever to happen to her, but it could have been the best thing in the world to ever happen to me. I'd much rather show it than tell it, but that's just not the way things work out in this town. You hear all that shit about only being as good as your last picture and all those other hoary old saws about the industry with a capital I, but that's ancient Hollywood masturbatory storytelling. If you're smart, you get your next picture set up before the last one comes out. You're as good as your last two. I guess. It started with film school. We didn't have the kind of money you need to go to SC and use all that stuff Stephen and George bought for them, but I did get a scholarship at UCLA, so you make do, right? It was great. I mean, just imagine having all that equipment to use for nothing. Sure, most of the study work had to be done on video, but the thesis was always shot on film with sync sound, even optical titles. I shot mine in 35mm scope and Dolby stereo. One good thing about UCLA is the agent connection. You make a good film or write a good script, and every door in Century City suddenly opens up to you. It's like dogs smelling a bitchin' heat. Make a short film on your own, and even if it's the fucking Titanic, nobody's ever going to see it unless it comes from film school. So that's what happened. It took me a year and a half to finish Words Without Voices, but it was worth it. I badgered my way into incredible locations, built weird, wonderful sets that represented every dreamscape you could imagine, and many you couldn't, I'm sure, got a full orchestral original score, and made my 24-minute epic. If you know lighting, manipulation, composition, and you throw away the zoom lens, directing's easy. After copywriting the film in my name, and not the school's, they weren't going to make money off my talent, I submitted it to film festivals around the world and started collecting ribbons. First place at AFI Fest, first place at USA Film Festival, honorable mention in Seattle. Fuck 'em, who cares about Seattle? And then you learn about taking meetings. I got calls from Endeavor, William Morris, CAA, the whole catalog. The hungry young guys have the most hustle, but the old Jewish farts have the connections and the clients. Maybe you wouldn't want to eat with them, but they know how to get a deal green-lit. I learned quick that it's the agent, not the agency, that makes the difference. The old guys are never too eager to take on the new clients, but some of them can be convinced, eventually. All of them wanted me to leave a cassette of my film. Can you imagine that? I shot it in Panavision, spent weeks on the stereo mix, and they're going to glance at it through phone calls on a 19-inch screen. I know these lazy bastards all have screening rooms, so I insisted that they run the film in 35. I was nice about it and everything, but very persistent, so they'd know that they were dealing with an artist. Well, I got the pick of the litter. Made a couple of mistakes. First, like everybody does, one of these 10%ers got real excited about getting me a homicide meeting, as if I would even consider television dreck. Another one thought getting me a sequel would speed things up. Right. Do Halloween 2000 and Hollywood spreads its legs. And who knows, maybe Hard Bodies 4. So finally, old Rosen at Spectacular Artists and I reach an understanding. I mean, you don't want to watch this toothless clown take meals, but he knows how to throw his 98 pounds around. We don't want to make development deals, he says. We want to make movies. No TV, no cable, theatrical features only. My scripts, full purchase only, no options, pay and play. It's good cop, bad cop time. I'm taking meetings in high-altitude offices on every lot with Walter and Casey and Mike and Jeffrey and all the big boys, discovering how easy all of this can be. Thank God for film school. These guys love to talk about how there's such a void left by Preston Sturges and Alfred Hitchcock, and how there's never been an American equivalent to The Bicycle Thief and all that other dinosaur shit I flunked in Film History 101. And then I talk Carpenter, Dante, Hooper, Cameron, my gods. They like that, but only if you talk Poltergeist and not Life Force, Halloween and not The Thing, Titanic and not True Lies. The supreme measure of art is worldwide box office. So I pitch them my movies and listen to their reactions. They give me their thoughts, and I get all excited about some of their ideas, as though they just made my story better than I ever could have alone. Then I hang back and consider their notes a few moments before telling them why those ideas don't work. They get a feeling of give and take, that I'm willing to listen to their suggestions, and yet that I'm strong enough to defend my own ideas. They like me. My job is to charm them, and then Rosen gets to be the asshole. But that's okay, he's used to that. He likes that. He wheels and deals, gets the studios fighting over me. The price goes into the stratosphere, and I get to make my movie in Burbank. Now there's an experience. At UCLA, you got everybody and his grandmother thrilled to death to be a part of a movie. Tell them it'll be on cable and you can hose any of the women who took their clothes off for free on camera. Everybody works 20 hours a day just for the sake of making your movie. Commitment, creativity, drive. Everybody wants to help out. But the studio experience is something else again. First, there's the unions. You've never seen so many people to do so few things. You kick out a plug, a union electrician has to plug it in. You're just about to shoot the crucial shot, you and the cameraman, cinematographer, have been setting up for the last 3 hours, and the assistant director calls lunch. Of course, everybody dicks around when they get there, so you can't start on time, but there is no going over, and you're into triple golden time. And then there's the 27 Teamster drivers who are assigned to the show, sitting on their asses in their air-conditioned station wagons, waiting around at $2,500 a week in case somebody needs a Diet Dr. Pepper at the company store. But that's the least of it. That shit I can understand. These guys make a living, they do their work, and they get paid. The suits are worse. I mean, I wear a tie on the set. When you can still get into Disneyland on a junior ticket and shaving is an exercise in wishful thinking, you do anything you can to direct from a position of power. These fuckers, in their Armanis with their illegal Cuban cigars and soft voices, are the reason why all the movies you see are shit. Okay, here's how they think. What does good mean to you? Quality? Great. You and I think alike. But good, to these guys, is familiar. Good is somebody else's hit. God forbid you make something unique with an original vision. No, they want the heart of Forrest Gump, the visual kinetics of Star Wars, the pacing of Lethal Weapon 4, the gloss of Armageddon, shit like that. All they know how to sell is what they know how to sell. And that, not very well. So, once we're in pre-production, there are the fights. They want storyboards, and I don't work with storyboards. We hire a storyboard artist to keep them happy, knowing full well I'm never going to look at the fucking little cartoons once I'm on the set. Then there's casting. Oh, God, you wouldn't believe the names they want in my movie. If it was up to me, and believe me it wasn't, I'd cast all unknowns. I want you to see the characters I've created, not famous actors in the roles, but no. I write the scientist role, patterned on an old high school biology teacher of mine, and they want Tom Cruise. Tom fucking Cruise to play a biogeneticist. For the social worker, they can get Gwyneth Paltrow, but they'd have to give her dad executive producer credit. Ultimately, it doesn't matter who I want, because with money and schedule and billing and studio problems, nobody's available anyway. At least not until you get down to the bottom of the list, Dreg City. And then, of course, there is the wonderfully creative hand of Mr. Flotsam, our esteemed producer. He developed this package, and his involvement is primarily to bring in Mark Snow for the music, and he gets a presentation credit for that. For that, he should get a black eye. This film demands a full orchestra, and I got a fucking synthesizer programmer from some wannabe Twilight Zone TV series. Somehow, we get into production. Once the train starts, there is no stopping it. Digital Domain is already shooting plates for the effects shots. The dailies are coming in. The suits are bitching about diffusion and coverage and boom shadows. They haven't the slightest idea how a movie is made. All I can say is, trust me. I know what I'm doing. You're going to love it when it's cut. Of course, that's not enough for them. They're insisting on more coverage. At the same time, they're bitching about going over schedule and budget. And this isn't Godzilla or Waterworld. This is just a lousy $12 million they're talking about. Okay, I admit I can be a bit tyrannical on the set. But do you blame me? My name is on the line, written and directed by me. Nobody notices the accountant's name. Nobody cares about the editor or cinematographer or the atmosphere or matte artist. Nobody gives fuck one about costume design. So, yeah, if it's going to get done, it's going to get done right, even if it means a little more time and money. What are they going to do, fire me and replace me 20 days in on a 35-day shoot? So maybe a couple of thespians cried. It's the performance that counts, not how you get it. The only thing anybody can judge is what's on the screen. And actors, they'll do anything. Unless they're names, of course. Then the fucking spoiled little prima donna babies won't even give you so much as a little nipple. You've never seen a less cooperative group of people. I never set out to win a popularity contest. I just wanted to make my film. So we made it. It wasn't that much over budget. I mean, it wasn't Titanic or anything like that. So they sneaked my cut, like the Directors Guild requires. The preview cards were okay, not as good as we hoped, but okay. And it wasn't made for the carbohydrate crowd anyway. This is a sophisticated film, and they preview it for the horny-handed machinists and their toothless girlfriends in Long Beach. Brilliant. So the studio, of course, recut it and completely fucked the whole thing up and tested their abortion in San Diego, my hometown. Thanks, guys. Somehow the trades found out about the San Diego sneak, and they crucified us. I mean, slit us up the middle and yanked out the entrails. Those guys like nothing more than shitting on an artist. If they know so much about making movies, let them try it. Fuck critics. If you ever met a critic, you wouldn't want to eat with him either. So much for flavor of the month. It plays the art house graveyard in 4 major markets. No TV support, no radio, just some print ads in the hip weekly papers that nobody pays for anyway. It plays in the 50-seat house at the Herpes Cineplex, and even Rosen doesn't answer my calls anymore. My one solace is that it killed Anna-Marie Longine's career in features. She got a sitcom last season, but it was gone after 3 weeks. They put it up against the last season of Seinfeld. I gloated. Okay, so the brothers Warner, or at least their corporate equivalent, give me the boot. So what? There's 6 or 7 other majors. Yeah, right. Except that with the executive circle jerk that goes on, the VP assigned to your picture will be at Universal next week. His girlfriend is being hosed by an exec at Columbia who's now at TriStar until his father-in-law makes him exec VP at Disney to keep him from telling about the episode in the private jet with the male lead in their new picture. So the old gray fag gets protection, and I get a chainsaw right in the career. Spectacular Artists dumped me. The development deal's undeveloped, and before I know it, I'm sniffing around Gramercy, Dimension, Castle Hill, and the other independents. I'm hosing this 43-year-old Jewish-American princess agent who wants me to call her Mama. You should see the claw marks on my back. She's got an office with no secretary in Canoga Park or some god-awful place in the valley, but the phone never rings. Never. She's hardly worth spilling my precious bodily fluids over. Or your time. Sorry. She calls in a few favors and gets me a meeting with the Weinsteins on another Hellraiser thing. I go in, tie and all, and it's inevitably the same song. I'm sorry Mr. Weinstein's assistant was called out of town at the last minute, but he personally asked Mr. Fourth-String Pimple-Face Nobody to hear your pitch. Needless to say, my pitches were never home runs. The galling thing is that these guys are constantly hiring first-time directors, guys who've only made videos of their kids' birthday parties before, wind up getting $100,000 to do these coming-of-age and showing teenage tit art house indies that gross $67 million. I've done a studio picture, for Christ's sakes. Get the bottom rung shoved up my ass. By now, my beach condo had flown into repossession land, ditto my SLK. I met Rebecca in a corridor at DreamWorks. I think we were both thinking of fucking the same producer. Her dream was jumping from soaps to features. Personally, I thought she only made history by doing hardcore, but who am I to say so? Shacking up in Rebecca's West Hollywood apartment meant that I could dump Mama as a fuckmate, but keep her on the string as an agent. Rebecca also had a car. By now, I'm starting to think that sitcom shit ain't so bad. The door is slammed in my face so hard that Just Shoot Me starts to seem pretty goddamn funny. I had to get out, go somewhere, anywhere, get away from the TV. Rebecca was out on an interview, so I jumped the bus downtown. It's not what you think. Downtown L.A. has no orange trees, no limos or movie stars, nothing you'd ever want to send pictures of to Mom. Just corporate high-rises and a crumbling, decaying, but lively city center, virtually 100% Latino. Street vendors hustling in Spanish, salsa blasting from cheap, torn speakers, outlet stores, huge, fantastic old movie palaces, now dowdy and rotting, showing 3 Spanish-language hits for $2, 24 hours a day. It's much more like Mexico City than the center of an American metropolis. All I can do is wander and watch, chewing churros as the cops make the winos perambulate along, gulping fresh Mexican juice from the vendors while a pimp opens his whore's face in a piss-scented doorway. I like it here. The street's like a 360-degree Dolby digital surround movie. One of the things I like best is the collapsible green magazine rack on every corner. They're filled with weird Mexican adult comic books, bosomy romance pulps, and unbelievably bloody wrestling magazines. Really great stuff. They cost next to nothing, and are worth every centavo, even if you don't speak Spanish, like me. But this time, I found more than masked wrestlers in bondage. The old woman minding the stand had a basket in the shade, which she kept rocking with her foot. I saw the blanket in the basket squirm. She noticed me looking and moved in front of it. "Muchacho?" I asked, because I had nothing else to say. "Muchacha." Like it really mattered if it was a boy or a girl. A baby's a baby, right? They all look like Alfred Hitchcock anyway. Then the kid started to cry, this weird, soft mewling sort of sound. I sneaked a peek over the Santo magazine. The crying got louder, but the old lady wouldn't move. She just kept watching me, like she was mad at me or something. I can't help it. I watch stuff all the time. I guess I'm nosy, but show me a filmmaker who isn't a voyeur, and I'll show you a TV lifer. The kid's cat-like bellow was a primal screech by now, and even the old lady could no longer pretend to ignore it. She picks up the baby and lifts her blouse to release a stretched, hanging blob of a tit. She carefully lifts the edge of the baby blanket and springs a leaking, incredibly long and erect nipple into the begging mouth. She turns to see me watching her, and our eyes lock. I can't look away, and her grim face defies my stare. Finally, the infant has taken its fill and releases its hold on her breast. The leaking prong of her nipple springs up and is quickly tucked away after splashing drops of lactose on the baby's face. As she wiped its face, I caught my first glance of it. This was no child. I didn't know what it was, but it was nothing I'd seen before. It was slippery-looking, completely hairless, with dark, rubbery skin. It looked more like a human than any other kind of animal, but just barely. It seemed like it had been burned or something, except that its skin was wet, oily. It had lips like a fish, large and gasping, breathing like a rich fat man puffs on a Havana, wet and floppy. I tried to get a better look, but she kept shielding it from me, covering it with the blanket and blocking it from view with her girth. I tried to wear as much sympathy as I could get on my face, a mask of soft, gentle caring. I had to see this kid more closely. Talk was useless. She couldn't speak English, and Spanish is Greek to me, but I reached out with all state-sized helping hands to touch the baby. She was hesitant and defensive, but when she saw I had no intention of hurting or making fun of the thing, she let me lift the blanket, still watching my face the whole time. Close up, with time really to see it, this freak baby was incredible. I knew immediately that I was back in business. And if you judge this thing the way you do a real baby, it was a girl. I had Rebecca's rent money in an envelope in my back pocket and gave it to the old woman. I'm not sure why. I guess I just had to touch it. This thing would make the most incredible story ever. It all rushed through my mind in the time it took for the lights to flash around the marquee of the $1 Million Theater, all the words that had been shoved down my throat from the critics and the development meetings. Heart, story, character, all that shit. I just wanted to hold the thing, feel its reality, touch it. But I didn't just want to do some latex life story. Words without voices had soured me on special effects. This thing was real, and that's what I had to show the world. No state-of-the-art Stan Winston special effect could ever hope to compete with the beating heart, coursing blood reality of this slippery, shifting irised creature squirming in the blanket in my hands. This baby was my movie. I couldn't tell how old it was. How do you judge the age of something you've never seen before? It couldn't have been more than a couple of months. When it realized that somebody new was holding it, its eyes locked onto mine, and we were both transfixed. The muddy irises seemed to swirl like whirlpools, clearing and changing to blue, then becoming so clear that I swear I could see the brain behind them. I could feel its heartbeat rippling through my hands as I stared into its cortex, distantly hearing it mewl and seeing music deep within. Not like musical notes, but actually seeing the music itself. I don't know how else to explain it, except to compare it to the acid trips my stepfather always talks about. This kind of eye contact seemed to tire the kid out, and the huge eyes filled with dead brown mud again, and then slowly drifted closed. When I looked up, Mamacita was vamoosed. Not that I minded. She had a chance to dump the freak and jumped at it. If I had to sell year-old wrestling magazines to farm workers on a street corner, I'd probably have done the same thing. But I lucked out. I had this incredible treasure in my hands. I would get another chance to thrill the world, and a month's rent for Rebecca's West Hollywood digs would pay for the old bitch's flop for 5 years. Later, I would realize that she got the better end of the deal. Rebecca was freaked but fascinated by the little slug in the bassinet in the kitchen. I decided to leave the details out of the story until later, especially the part about the rent money. I'd deal with that when the Arab came around asking for it. "You said you always wanted a baby," I told her. She was not amused, but I knew how to handle her. She wouldn't have any trouble dealing with the freak if she knew she'd get at least a featured role in the picture at scale +10. We quickly discovered how simple the care and feeding of the little monster was. It sucked on anything and everything that found its way into its disgusting little smacking lips. Once, Rebecca was leaning over it to get a good look, and the little sucker went for her breast right through the shirt. I tried to joke her into suckling it, but her sense of humor has its limits. I named it Asta. I gave Mama in Canoga Park the heave-ho and set about scaling every bridge I ever burned. I bullied, badgered, and blackmailed my way into meetings everywhere in town, from the sleaziest Troma to the most muscle-bound Paramount. At first, it was always the third stringers like before. The studios are cautious. You can get the meetings. They don't want to close the door on anybody who might make a hit movie for somebody else and not be able to get them back. The guy who flops with THX 1138 at Warner's might go on to do Star Wars at Fox. The door is shut, but not locked. Anyway, I've got meetings with sons of mucky mucks at other studios, and we talk hard and story and character, and we shoot box office shit. And then I bring up the idea. It's always the same reaction. "Yeah, but it's been done. The Unfortunate Baby is really more of a movie of the week, don't you think? But I'd be glad to put you in touch with our TV people." And that's supposed to signal the end of the meeting. I won't let go. We talk Elephant Man and Mask and E.T. and all that other heartfelt mutant crap, and my eyes go misty and caring and gentle. They start to get uncomfortable. I tell them how the idea could be done so cheaply and how much I learned by the last experience. Then I shrug like it's obviously brick wall time, and I say thank you and walk out like a broken man. But they can't see my smile. Before the door closes all the way, I pretend to spot the box I have sitting in the reception area like I forgot about it. And before Mr. Pimple can finish punching up his next phone call, I scoop it up and swing around to face him with Asta in my arms under a Men in Black baby blanket. "Oh, by the way, you want to see it?" Of course he's too busy, and he has no idea that what I'm talking about is real, and he wants me the hell out of his office. Fruitless meetings never end. So I don't give him a chance to answer. I rush up, put the thing under his nose, and pull back the alien. The guy shits his pants. He wants to know if the guys who did the Small Soldiers made it, and I have to say over and over, no, it's real. They don't believe me. I hold it closer so they can smell the acrid urine stink that seeps from its skin and invite them to touch her. Every single one I ever asked has declined. It's amazing how quickly I get access to the latter. I meet Sonny's boss, then her boss, then his boss, then his boss, and finally it's the rarefied penthouse office of Daddy himself. At this point, Rosen's calling me back. He's caught wind of the Tar Baby story, and he wants to break some backs at the majors. I don't blame the guy for dropping me. After all, I was poison. And Rosen doesn't give a shit about relationships or being my pal. He's a businessman, right? He jerks my dick and I jerk his, and we both come dollars. He knows I know he can negotiate the hell out of my deals, so I give him the nod. It's Old Home Week, and he's got the studios beating each other up for the baby story. Praise Jesus. We set the deal up at Sony. I'm writer, producer, and director. No presentation credit, but I'm not crying. We want to keep the budget low, shoot in some right-to-work state in the South, and I finally get to cast my talented unknowns and throw Rebecca a 3-line bone. Now that I'm producing, I can see the wisdom of keeping costs low, so that it's tougher for the studio to hide the profits if the film does business. We're talking a below-the-line of maybe 5.3, and most of the above-the-line is me. I decided early not to allow the cast and crew to see the kid until we actually shot the birth scene. I knew the reality of their reactions would make the scene really sing. I couldn't wait. Everybody loved the script, even the heart and story and characters. But wait until they saw Pee-wee. I was worried that during 3 or 4 months of pre-production, Asta might grow out of her weirdness. The freakishness might just be a stage. I held my breath every morning before checking under that bug blanket, but the thing wasn't changing at all. In truth, I did learn a lot from the Warners' experience. I'm prepared this time. I become the cast and crew's best pal, actually let them make suggestions and pretend to consider them for a moment before I turn them down and do it my way. They like that. Everything is going fine. We've run a day or two over schedule, but stay under budget, so the suits are happy. They like the dailies, love the coverage, and what we call the look of show. I couldn't be happier. During my breaks, I'm rocking my Winnebago with Cindy, my superstar discovery, chewing her implants and filling her with my goo. But the headier foreplay is thinking about the birth scene, scheduled for the Monday of week 4. Everybody's asking to see the puppet. Who made the baby? When are we going to see the poor little thing? I just smile, playing the wise man with the secret. B-Day. Crew call is 7 a.m., and I get there an hour early. Asta's been a little fussy, but seems okay. She's comfortable and well-fed. I've got her in a basket that once held Snooki's cookies. Everybody's excited about the big scene. We'll be shooting Asta for the next 3 weeks, but this is her debut. I want to shoot the freak in continuity, just in case it changes at all during production. The locations that feature it are limited, so it's easy to shoot those scenes in order. So, we've got Cindy Starlett's belly as padded as Dr. Ellenbogen stuffed her breasts, and she's on her back, hyping up. For authenticity's sake, she's been taking Lamaze classes at the clinic. Whatever works. Rebecca's in the corner studying her line, looking sexy in her nurse outfit. She has no idea about me and Cindy. Not that it matters if she did. I can afford my own place now. Russell is just about finished lighting. I rush off and bring in the basket for my Winnie and keep it hidden from view as I move on to my mark. I'm doing my cameo as the doctor who delivers the thing, so I'm in total control. I even gave myself a crucial close-up. I'm mildly surprised to see that Cindy isn't wearing anything under the hospital gown. She winks, knowing I'm the only one in a position to know, and I give her little curls a tickle. She tries not to react in front of the others. Then I bring Asta up onto the table, covered in her little blanket. Still, nobody but me has seen the thing, and my heart is pounding through the stethoscope hanging from my ears. I place the baby thing between Cindy's legs. I like putting things between Cindy's legs. I'm the only one who can see Asta, and I enjoy watching it move wetly up against Cindy's private parts. Cindy tries not to react to the rippling wet pressure. Then, the inquisitive little beggar's lips seek out something that resembles a nipple down there and starts to suckle. "Quiet! Rolling!" Cindy can scarcely breathe, but she isn't about to blow the shot. "Speed!" I can't believe what only I can see, but manage to stifle my laughter and gently try to move it away from Cindy's happy button. Call me sensitive. "Slate it. Settle. Okay, Cindy. Action!" And the camera makes its slow, relentless push into the table. Cindy and I have spray sweat on our brows. I notice Rebecca watching me sneak a private grope under Cindy's sheet, but she won't bitch while the camera is rolling. It's perfect. Drama, tension, Cindy really making me believe she's delivering a difficult baby. Maybe this method shit isn't so bad. She was probably really dilating under there. The camera is almost on top of us now. She's spasming with pain, and I'm struggling heroically to save the baby. Special Effects releases the wash of fluid from hoses run through the table, and I lift Asta from between Cindy's thighs, holding the thing up in the blue light directly in front of the camera. Asta played it beautifully, letting loose with that long, weak tremolo, spooking everyone on the stage into bug-eyed silence. I kept it rolling for a full 2 extra minutes, and when I finally yelled, "Cut!" cast and crew alike burst into spontaneous applause. I bowed, holding the thing up in front of them, and Hollywood welcomed me home. When I was sure that there was no camera bobble or sound problem, there was no way I was going to tempt fate. The take was perfect, and we wouldn't do another for Prudential. I cleared the gawkers away and set up for the close-up. Asta was no trouble at all under the lights. It just lay there as if waiting for direction. Russ asked me if I wanted to use a doll for a stand-in to set the lights, and like a supreme dick, I said no. No doll is going to have the same reflective qualities of this kid's weird flesh, and it didn't seem to mind anyway. Well, I don't know how the word got out so quick, but welfare showed up on the set before we even ran through the close-up. They were furious, screaming child abuse. Now, there's some law about not being able to have an infant under stage lights for more than 30 seconds. And there must be a state welfare worker and a nurse and a teacher present at all times or some shit like that. I tell them there's no child here, that it's special effects or an animal. They want to know where the Wrangler is. Right, freak Wrangler. By then, we're all yelling, so the first AD calls a break and everybody else is glad to sneak away. While the welfare bitch and I are getting close to fisticuffs, the second AD gently taps my shoulder. What he whispers makes the whole argument moot. After biting his head off for butting in, I push him aside and rush over to the now dark delivery table where Asta is lying. I try to stand in the way, but the bitch in the gray suit is right behind me, wanting to see. I let her. Because the little freak wasn't moving, or breathing, or eating, or smelling, or fucking living. Inside my head there were fireworks, suicide, guns, and cacophony. But I stood stock still, my face a blank, vapid wall of I told you so. While the woman was trying to puzzle out the rapidly rubberizing little torso on the table, I slowly turned to look her in the eye and, using all my power, said softly, "Is this really something that concerns you?" We both turned to see what it was not. A glass-eyed, latex-skinned dummy prop. I remember being astonished at how phony it looked with its lights out. That devoid of life, it looked like a cast-off from Critters or something. "There's your baby," I gloated, and she split, pissed off, even disappointed. I called a wrap, and while everybody started to get ready for the next day's shoot, I took the little body and retired to the Winnebago. Cindy was waiting for me, looking all smiley and coquettish about the secret gumming she got under the sheet. I threw her out. She looked all upset and hurt, but fuck her. This was the end of my career. I locked the door and sat the little creep on the table and stared at it. The thing now looked ridiculously fake, its skin drying and looking like inner tube rubber, even down to the white dust of powder. The eyes were sightless, soulless, clear glass windows to a dark room. Before I knew it, Rebecca was knocking on the door, but I just ignored her. She gave up quickly. She must not have been as pissed as I thought she would be. I started yelling at the little pile of shit on the table, backhanding it to the floor. "I'm sorry now, but you've got to comprehend the stress I was under. This little fucker was the key to everything I'd worked so long and hard for, and now all that was smoke. Fuck!" Suicide was an alternative, but I'm too much of a coward to pull the trigger and not enough of a coward to go quickly. But as I stared into its ugly rubber mug, a simpler choice came to mind. We had the most important shot in the can already. The establishing shot of the monster was there. I could use the whole take. We'd already moved into a good tight shot anyway, and there was no way the audience wouldn't buy it. Shot properly, maybe one of these effects tyros could help me pull off the rest of the show. Looking at the thing now with its wick extinguished, the difference between life and latex was obvious, but there was no other way out. We shut down the production for a few weeks while we sent out emergency bids to Rob Bottin and Steve Johnson and some non-union guys. When I showed them the kid the next day, they all thought it was nice, but a little simplistic in design. They all wanted to know who made it, and why didn't I just use them? I told them I'd made it myself based on a dream I had, but I needed someone who could articulate and manipulate it better than I could. It had to be exactly the same look, I told them, only with more life. We thought about that digital shit, but I wanted something you can actually hold in your hands and get wet. After the bids came in, we went with a local Texas kid who cost us a third of the big boys and was willing to work 30-hour days for the honor. As I was waiting in the screening room to see the birth scene dailies, I held my breath. All the big cheeses were there. They knew it was the most important moment in the picture. I had only seen it on a shitty Avid output so far, but it was perfect. Everything in perfect focus, no bobbles, and the kid looked great. Unbelievable. When the suits all gasped at the reveal, I started to breathe easy. By now, they all assumed that this thing had always been a special effect anyway, and were almost glad to shut down for a couple of weeks to keep the quality up. All we had to do was hook them with the real baby footage, and they'd buy the rubber surrogate. I went home that night feeling almost relaxed. New place, no furniture in it yet, just a bed, a Laserdisc, DVD combi, and a projection TV. And a wicker basket with Asta in it. Once the latex clone was finished, I promised to give the thing a decent burial out back, but only if the rubber one was perfect. I didn't have to shoot the next day, so I had my own mini-movie marathon. It's Alive, Rosemary's Baby, and Taboo 8, which put me to sleep, but with a raging erection. It was an engorgement that would not subside in slumber, but rather kept time with my heartbeat until the door opened late that night. I opened my eyes. Unexpectedly, delightfully, Rebecca and Cindy entered in a shaft of light that penetrated the sparse, diaphanous nightclothes they wore. However unlikely, they seemed the best of friends, and got even friendlier when they joined me in the kip. Our acrobatics were like a letter to Penthouse, and featured every erotic combination you could imagine, and 6 or 7 more. It was a release I hadn't felt since pre-production began. I had a mouth at either end of me, and the two of them brought me to the most devastating, sphincter-clenching orgasm of my life. But on the second jolt, I woke up, my little friend pumping, my eyes rolled back in abandoned ecstasy. As the waves of orgasm died down, I gradually resumed consciousness. I opened my eyes for real, and almost threw up. That slippery fucking maggot kid from the cookie basket was between my legs, impaled on my divining rod taken so deeply down its throat that I must have fertilized its stomach. The thing was ravenously sucking my milk until I was dry. Its skin was slippery again, oily and alive, as it slid hungrily over my flesh. Barely conscious at 4 a.m. and dazed from the force of the orgasm, I could only stare through slitted, puffy eyes at the monstrosity devouring me. The incredible suction slackened as it sensed there was no more juice to be had, and I weakly backhanded the thing. It didn't even react. Gathering my strength and disgust, I hit out with full force, knocking the piece of shit against the wall where it hit with a splat before sliding stickily and lifelessly down the wall. I stood up, my head throbbing with every heartbeat, and walked dizzily across the room, following my still extended wand until I was right over Asta. There was a trail of blood on the wall pointing at the gooey little heap that lay on the floor. Guilt, disgust, and horror welled up in the pit of my stomach and lurched out of my mouth and onto the dead heap. First with the stage lights, and now literally at my own hand. I had killed the thing again. I jumped into my sweats and scooped the horrid pile into a plastic bag, then carried it out into the yard. There was no moon, which was fine with me, so I took the mess and buried it deep behind the barbecue pit. Blood blisters on my hands, I rushed back into the barren house. I stayed in bed the whole next day, just thinking about the little monster. There was no innocence there. This was no child, no infant. In the months I had been in possession of it, there had been no sign of growth or maturity or change. The thing is what it is, not what it's going to be. What that is, I don't know, but I soon would make an educated guess. All I know is that day I was as fucked up as I'd ever been. My ecstasy had been linked end to end with extreme revulsion. I'd been blown by the ghost of a monster baby. Not recommended. And then the fucking toilet's backed up. I know that may seem mundane in this perspective, but it has everything to do with it. When I tried to flush, there was merely a gurgle, and I knew at once the damned machine was playing with its food. The lid was lowered, and the plumber called. I forgot about it until I had to go again that afternoon. Ready for relief, I lifted the lid, only to see that fucking squirmer Asta settled in the bowl, basking in dinner. I tried to flush it down to greet the legendary sewer gators, but the plumbing just backed up, spewing fouled water onto the bathroom floor. Again, in anger, humiliation, and disgust, I beat the shit out of it, mangled the tortured little body, and killed it a third time. Big fucking deal. It would be back, no matter how often or distant or deeply I buried the thing. The old Mexican woman knew I was her salvation the first time she saw me. I know that now. I must have destroyed the baby 24 times by now, but it'll keep coming back. To feed. I can only imagine how long its last host continued to lactate and suckle the parasite that had claimed and controlled her. It's like giving a stray cat a dish of milk. You'll never shake the fucking thing. My lust to own it was the closest thing to love it ever felt, and now we're paired, mated, for life. It comes each day after I kill it, to partake of my body's cast-offs, my cells, my essence. It sweats my saliva, lives on my excreta, rejuvenated by my spermatozoa. God help me if it tastes my blood. In the months since we shot the birth scene, sleep has been only a distant dream that comes fleetingly. The phone used to ring before I pulled it out, and many people have come to the door and given up trying to find me. Whenever my defenses drop, it comes home to ravage me. I fade into exhausted sleep, knowing I'll wake to find it devouring me. My sex slid deep into its female region, another slippery appendage behind and inside me, taking, not wasting anything, not even tears. This thing will live as long as I do. Maybe longer. I had to have the little fucker to exploit. It was the strongest emotion I could feel, and now I'm paying up. I know of one sure way to end the torment. I can't believe I've put it off so long. Asta may be indestructible, but I am not. I have only a single regret.